right, ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with session one, where we will talk about the challenges in achieving a maritime nation in present times. Many littoral countries are heavily dependent on the sea it borders for commerce, transport, territorial demarcations, and other maritime activities. But what are the challenges these countries are facing, and what is the way forward? We have three speakers to drive these conversations, but before I introduce them, I would like to remind the audience that there will be a Q&A session towards the end. You may submit your questions through the public chat box you see here. Don't forget to state the name of the speaker you would like to put forth your questions to. So we look forward to having your feedback as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker is First Admiral Fadhil Abdul Rahman. He is the Senior Director of Development Planning of the Royal Malaysian Navy, or RMN. First Admiral Fadhil joined RMN in 1988 and was commissioned into the executive branch. He has completed extensive sea services on board a number of ships, including as Executive Officer of KD Kelantan and KD Likyu. His functions in the Navy and Joint Force settings include Staff Officer Strategy at Navy Headquarters, Chief Staff Officer at Fleet Command Headquarters, and Director of Human Resources Development at the Navy Headquarters as well. He holds a master's degree in Defense Studies from the National University of Malaysia and a master's degree in Management from UNITAR. So without further ado, I would now like to pass the floor to First Admiral Fadhil.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for the kind introduction. Excellencies, esteemed panelists, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum and good evening, perhaps good morning for our friends from Europe. First and foremost, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the organizer for inviting me to speak. I'm definitely honored to be in the panel and look forward to sharing further views at the end of this session. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm First Admiral Fadhil, currently serving at the Navy Headquarters as the Senior Director for Plan and Development. For the next 10 minutes or so, I will share my perspective on the topic, Challenges for a Maritime Nation Today, within the framework of maritime security, which is the theme of this conference. I don't intend to dwell too much into the details, just enough to hopefully set the motion for subsequent speakers and, of course, the ensuing discussion session in the end. Therefore, I intend to share a few pertinent points from my perspective as a practitioner, as I believe it is better to leave the nitty-gritty to the experts and researchers. Of course, these are my condensed view. There are more to it really. We know that discussion in the form of seminars and conferences on maritime security has been taking place for many, many years. Perhaps our purpose today is to help refine some of the earlier works already put in motion by those people before us, and maybe charting our way towards perfecting or harmonizing them. Ladies and gentlemen, I will begin by providing some overview on contemporary issues and challenges faced by typical maritime nation such as Malaysia. Subsequently, I will touch on maritime security challenges based on Malaysia's and regional setting and arrangements, which to my mind is the focus area of today's session. Following that, I will share my propositions on further enhancing maritime security cooperation for your consideration before I conclude. Ladies and gentlemen, mindful of the time, I will spare all the details concerning the importance of the sea to our survival. Much discussions and efforts has been put in place to ensure that it is safe and secure for global use. This is a testament to the fact that the sea has and always will always be vital for our survival. I will just mention some of the challenges to a maritime nation that I think deserve our attention. Firstly, in the case of Malaysia, we have a considerably long coastline, therefore, a vast maritime area to cover. The islands close to our shores have been used as a transit for illegal activities. Therefore, the need to guard our sea and land borders requires substantial number of assets and capabilities to achieve the desired end state. Furthermore, on our sea fronts, the high density of shipping places additional challenges in identifying potential cross-border criminal activities. Also, due to geography, we are naturally blessed with at least two of the world's main sea line of communications, and of course, with the responsibility to protect them. The second apparent challenge, which relates to the above, is on interagency coordination. Understandably, coordination between 19 different agencies, all possessing their own respective standard operating procedures, concept of operations, priorities, and legal jurisdictions, is never an easy undertaking. And lastly, due to the impacts of the pandemic, there is a real need for us to manage illegal cross-border activities which could spread the virus from external sources, particularly through illegal immigration. As a result, extended patrols had to be increased and additional assets be assigned more frequently, resulting in a substantially costly undertaking. Not to mention the additional personnel and assets such as fast boats and intelligence, surveillance, and recognition capabilities, which had to be deployed to combat these illegal activities from penetrating our borders. Ladies and gentlemen, discussion on maritime security often points to threats that prevail within the maritime domain. However, we know that maritime security is not only about the sea, as it is also closely related to the challenges of security and development ashore. For instance, economic instability or economic turmoil in certain nations triggered the unlawful sea activities, as we have witnessed in the Gulf of Aden. Similarly, the impacts of the ongoing pandemic to people's socio-economic well-being may result in an increase in illegal activities at sea. At this juncture, amongst the many maritime security concerns that we continue to face is the increased health risk posed by cross-border crimes such as illegal immigration. Therefore, our efforts and considerable chunk of national resources are being channeled toward this aspect. In our case, at national level, there are at least two successful models of collaborative approach in the recent times, which are the Eastern Sabah Security Command or ESCOM established in 2013, and the more recent one is the National Task Force formed last year. I would like to think that they represent a whole of government and whole of society approach as promoted by Malaysia's Defence White Paper. On a wider scope, the existing regional maritime security arrangements, such as the Malacca Straits Patrol, Trilateral Maritime Patrol, and Information Fusion Center, continue to be relevant. However, we may want to revisit our approach or broaden the scope of such cooperation to address other non-traditional security issues involving illegal cross-border activities. Fundamentally, maritime security is transnational. Thus, capacity building for maritime security requires cooperation between nations. Since the security agenda incorporated security concerns beyond individual states, significant innovation in international practice need to be met on top of traditional way of facing maritime security issues. Ladies and gentlemen, after all has been said, one fact remains. We all have a goal in enhancing the effectiveness of existing maritime security architecture. I have no doubt that collaboration and integration are the key success factors to move forward through the challenging future. In this interconnected world, global crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic requires nations to cooperate and work together to overcome the situation. Taking the lessons from Malaysia's experience through the National Task Force, similar cooperation with other enforcement agencies can be introduced in the existing arrangement so that coordinated efforts can be carried out to curb illegal activities. Although the national priorities of each of our country may differ, there remain common ground in areas such as drug and human trafficking, terrorism, and sea robbery. The existing arrangements, with the inclusion of other agencies other than the navies, could considerably affect these illegal activities. However, we understand that what we do at the national level may not easily be adopted at the regional setting. Therefore, I would like to propose that each littoral state adapt the National Task Force model to increase the effectiveness of our collective efforts. Consequently, I am confident that countries around us is also benefiting from it. Leveraging on each country's effort, we can expect a favorable outcome collectively. I am also optimistic in the byproduct resulting from such interagency collaboration. We will have better understanding of each other's operational capabilities, attain greater resource optimization, better interoperability, improved ISR and maritime domain awareness, improved public trust, and many more. Clearly, there are more to gain from these efforts. So to conclude, collaboration is key. A well-coordinated effort involving other government agencies is the way forward in building and achieving collective resilience. As a community, we must continue to work together, share ideas and experiences, and continue to explore new ways in addressing maritime security issues. With that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, First Admiral Fadhil. You've laid out three very significant challenges in today's maritime realm: illegal activities, interagency coordination, and also the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, which I'm sure we will go deeper into with our next speakers. And you've noted also a key solution, a key something that we have to bear in mind moving forward, which is collaboration and integration. All these agencies and countries must work together. We must not work in silos. So I think that is a very important note to bear in mind for the way forward. Now, once again, I want to remind our audience members that you can start keying in your questions. I'm pretty sure that you already have some in your mind right now. Key them in the public chat box for the Q&A session later. Now, next we have Haji Adi Ihram, Dato Paduka Haji Mahmud, who is ASEAN Defense Senior Officials Meeting Working Group Leader and also the Permanent or Deputy Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Defense in Brunei. Prior to that, he was Director for the Directorate of Defense Policy and Head of Legal Affairs Unit at the Permanent Secretary's Office, Ministry of Defense, Brunei. As the Director of Defense Policy, he was actively involved in enhancing defense diplomacy at both bilateral and multilateral levels and was involved in various initiatives in the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting and ASEAN Defense Ministers Plus meeting. He is a legal graduate from the London School of Economics and Political Science, University of London. With that, the floor is yours, Haji Ihram.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Yang Berhormat Dato Sri Iqmal Hisham bin Abdul Aziz, Deputy Minister of Defence Malaysia, Yang Mulia Mr. Nur Hisham bin Rosli, Director General of the Malaysia Institute of Defence and Security, MiDAS, Ms. Miriam Fisher, Director of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, KAS Malaysia, distinguished speakers and delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Allow me to convey my appreciation of being invited to speak in this auspicious conference, especially on a topic that is of utmost significance to most, if not all, of us present here today. In recent years, ASEAN has been facing an unprecedented nature of increasingly growing security challenges in the Southeast Asian region, as it becomes a more significant regional and international player. Against the backdrop of a complex security environment, ASEAN sees the enduring interest in the region as a welcome progress for mostly economic and strategic reasons, which greatly contributes to its regional security and stability. This is also true in the maritime domain. It is why, therefore, in my opinion, that our topic this afternoon, maritime security amidst contemporaneous challenges towards a peaceful sea, could not have come at a more fitting timing. Our interconnected security landscape calls for all nations to work together, as many challenges cut across national boundaries. Indeed, in this delicately interwoven and overlapping issue, various factors may come into the foray. And to name but a few, are geopolitical development, increasingly rapid technological advancement, as well as commitment to multilateralism. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, increasingly complex major power relations in and around this region, and the way ASEAN manages and mediate these power dynamics will determine its relevance in spearheading its own maritime future. We are all sitting in a number of strategic waterways that links us to all our Asia-Pacific neighbors, and to many, they are also our economic lifelines. At the same time, we must be cognizant as the same maritime zones could also well turn into maritime flashpoints if we fail to manage interests tactfully based on the rule of law and international order. That, I believe, is why we as a region must turn major power influence to our collective benefits while adhering to ASEAN centrality. It is with much pleasure for me to acknowledge the remarkable regional efforts and achievements towards maritime security that we have reached over the years, leading to effective methods of addressing a range of maritime challenges. I believe all of us here would agree that we must continue in this momentum and develop further trust and confidence among our nations, our navies, and all relevant maritime agencies. Additionally, we also witness a spectrum of positive benefits in engaging external powers under practical cooperative mechanisms. Under the ASEAN Political Community Pillar, for example, we discuss and share our best practices for the collective ultimate aim towards a peaceful sea. The ASEAN Regional Forum Intersessional Meetings on Maritime Security, ARF-ISM-MS, the ASEAN Maritime Forum and ASEAN Maritime Forum Plus, the Regional Cooperation Agreement on Combat Piracy and Armed Robbery Against Ships in Asia, RECAP, the Western Pacific Naval Symposium, WPNS, the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Guidelines for Maritime Interaction, the Information Fusion Center in Singapore are all but a few that we all commit to. We also go far and beyond in our resolve by participating in the Combined Task Force 151 in the Gulf of Eden to enrich our strategic outlook on maritime security. Under the ADMM Plus, initiatives such as the Expert Working Group on Maritime Security and the ASEAN naval exercises with China, Russia, and the United States reflect this region's enduring commitment and interest to upholding maritime safety and security. And for ASEAN, the challenges confronting the region in the form of non-traditional security threats have become more imminent and frequent over the past years. As non-traditional security issues stretch wider and deeper in their ranges and complexities, issues such as public health emergencies, climate change, and cybersecurity threats have increasingly become national security concerns. Particularly with the global onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, ASEAN sees the need to be more dynamic in addressing the ongoing challenges. The COVID-19 situation has also further emphasized the need to work collectively as it gives the world a common goal to pursue together. And the challenges faced by the healthcare sectors have given rise to countries stepping up to help other countries in need. And in this battle against the pandemic, ASEAN has benefited from this vaccine diplomacy and is appreciative to countries that have contributed to the global fight against the pandemic, even while fighting their own pandemic woes. In the maritime domain, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing remains one of the greatest threats to not only the maritime ecosystems, but also to the region's economy. And despite having a mechanism that targets the problem, many still refuse to see IUU fishing as one of the biggest transnational and organized crimes out there. ASEAN has previously expressed its gruesome concern of IUU fishing in 2016 and since has pledged towards enhancing sustainable fishing in the region. And despite the socialization of major strategies within ASEAN to fight IUU fishing, as stated in the Strategic Plan of ASEAN Cooperation on Fisheries 2016 to 2020, IUU fishing is still widespread in the region. For practitioners of defense and security, the responsibility to identify and address emerging threats has become more challenging amidst the ever-changing global security environment. At the forefront of the undertaken efforts will be ASEAN utilizing existing security architectures and mechanisms to develop effectual action plans while supporting its members to improve cooperation amongst them. As the main defense dialogue and cooperation, the ADMM and ADMM Plus platforms have proven to be steadfast in its roles to support towards the realization of the ASEAN-wide initiatives, including the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework and the ASEAN Shield. Under the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting, Brunei Darussalam has introduced the ASEAN Direct Communications Infrastructure, which is basically a telephone hotline between the ASEAN Defense Ministers back in 2014, aimed at preventing or diffusing misunderstandings and misinterpretations, and therefore to prevent escalation at sea. It has seen positive developments since then, with the initiative is now extended to the Plus countries, which in essence will establish stronger linkages between ASEAN member states and the Plus countries to address security challenges in an open, transparent, and inclusive manner. This initiative will also support existing efforts such as the ASEAN Our Eyes initiative, which has set the ADI as its main component of communications. We will also enhance existing information sharing mechanism such as the ASEAN 365 information sharing platform, which is already utilized by our ASEAN militaries. Brunei Darussalam, as the chairman of the ADMM, has also conducted a stocktake exercise on the 15 years of cooperation in ADMM and ADMM Plus, and is working towards a strategy paper on the future of the ADMM. In this regard, the area of maritime security will be of significance and should remain a priority for the years to come. Moreover, in the latest iteration of the 15th ADMM, which took place last June this year, we adopted 8 new and revised concept papers, and one of the concept papers is on ADMM's external engagements, which speaks volumes of ASEAN's commitment to maintaining regional security and development, which undeniably involves maritime security. As a whole, ASEAN's ongoing commitment reflects the deep understanding of the changing landscapes of both geostrategic and geopolitical aspects, in which strengthening defense connections in any form is vital to respond to the traditional and non-traditional security challenges. In today's increasingly integrated, interconnected, and interdependent world, we are witnessing significant geopolitical shifts to this region. Major powers continue to be actively engaged in this region, where geopolitical tensions are expected to grow more pronounced. This is where the importance of multilateralism comes in. Crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic require shared collective responsibility, transparency, and action from all parties. ASEAN, utilizing existing initiatives amidst COVID-19, reflected ASEAN's commitment to maintaining regional security and development and its ASEAN centrality in essence. In moving forward, there needs to be strong determination and commitment to ensure progress and to continue learning best practices, which will help ASEAN to avoid any future miscalculations, especially at seas. In this regard, the sea lanes of communications remains vital to ASEAN. Unquestionably, because non-traditional security threats could also impact security and stability in the region, every country must acknowledge the importance of addressing these issues and have them discussed together. Being able to speak in this conference, although virtually, is a testament of how greatly we carry the importance of this issue forward. As this conference lines up some of the best individuals in their respective fields, it is with great pleasure to be able to participate in this conference, and I wish to see everyone again in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Haji Adi Ihram. You mentioned about having good relations with major powers of the world, that it is very important to be used to our benefit. And I hope we can go more into this later. Perhaps during the Q&A session, our audience members may have some questions on this. So thank you again to Haji Adi Ihram from Brunei. Our third guest speaker is His Excellency Michalis Rokas, who is the ambassador and head of the EU delegation to Malaysia. He has 26 years of experience in foreign affairs, having joined the European Commission External Relations Directorate General in 1994. His prior postings include Charge d'Affaires and Head of EU Delegation to New Zealand, First Secretary of the European Commission's Office in Hong Kong and Macau, Head of Support to Delegations Division at the European External Action Service, and Head of the China, Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, and Mongolia Division at the EEAS. Ambassador Rokas holds a bachelor degree in economics and also a postgraduate degree in European economics. With that, take it away, sir.
Thank you very much, and I'm particularly pleased and honored to participate in today's event. Haji Adi Ihram bin Dato Paduka, Haji Mahmud, who just hear what you said, and also the First Admiral Fadhil bin Abdul Rahman. I acknowledge the very important challenges both for Malaysia and ASEAN, as you mentioned it. This is a very timely event, And I must say so, I want to thank also MIDA and the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung for organizing it. And why is that? Because the European Union has just launched, or very recently, back in September, its strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. And as I've heard also the Honorable Deputy Minister of Defense saying, the challenges that this strategy for cooperation that it wants to address, it makes it particular of interest to Malaysia and to the ASEAN countries. In fact, this is the first time that the European Union formulates an overall regional strategy on how to engage with a variety of different partners in such wide economic and geographic and political space as the Indo-Pacific. It reflects, on the one hand, the increasing relevance of the Indo-Pacific for the European Union. The European Union has vital interests that regional order remains open and rules-based, as stressed by many of the speakers. We are ready to step up our engagements in and with the region. And that's why I am particularly pleased to share some thoughts today with you on the European Union strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, and especially the maritime dimension that it has already been discussed. This is a crucial area for cooperation with Malaysia, a country which is located in the geographic heart of the Indo-Pacific, which are the Straits of Malacca. So let me briefly give you an outline where we come from. The European Union has been heavily engaged in the Indo-Pacific for decades, building in the process of a vast portfolio of 12 trillion euros in investments, more than any other stakeholder in the region. It is the biggest development assistance provider, and we develop a strategic partnership with other actors such as ASEAN, India, China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea. Trade exchanges between the European Union and the Indo-Pacific are the highest in the world. 1.5 trillion euros in 2019 figures, and roughly 40% of the European Union's trade goes through this region, actually through the South China Sea and the Malacca Strait. Therefore, the European Union has members that they are very interested in further developing our ties. And also, may I remind you that we have also members that they are integral parts of the Indo-Pacific by virtue of history, territory, and their citizens, such as France. During the launch of the Indo-Pacific strategy a couple of months ago, we stressed that what is our aim? Our aim is to maintain a free, open Indo-Pacific while building strong and lasting partnerships to cooperate on matters from green transition, ocean governance, the digital agenda to security and defense. I think if we can say a motto for this strategy is to cooperate whenever possible, protecting our values and interests every time that it is necessary. So in the European Union's approach is about cooperation, not confrontation. We pursue an inclusive vision emphasizing ASEAN centrality as a cornerstone of our strategy. I underline that. This is a very important approach and also differs from other initiatives in the region, such as the AUKUS, that it has been announced almost at the same time of the European Union strategy. We seek, therefore, to reinforce our positive contributions to the region's stability, security, prosperity, and sustainable development, taking into account the principles of democracy, rule of law, and international law. Global megatrends such as the effects of climate change, the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, and of digitalization are core elements on which we seek cooperation with this region. As we mentioned before, the European Union's strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific is comprehensive and inclusive and acknowledges that the degree of cooperation may vary from partner to partner. So, among others, we will seek to broaden trade negotiations, including assessing the potential resumption of negotiations with Malaysia. We are also optimistic that soon we will conclude a partnership and cooperation agreement with Malaysia. However, these agreements are less of an end in itself. We consider them as springboards from which we can develop further our cooperation. Potential areas, they include green alliances and partnerships, digital connectivity partnerships, as well as cooperation or research and innovation. And I will discuss, and I come to discuss, because this is a new strategy, all these options with interlocutors from all sectors of the Malaysian administration in the days to come. So, among multiple and simultaneous challenges that the Indo-Pacific is facing, there are growing geopolitical competition, the ongoing military build-up, as well as non-traditional maritime security threats, as mentioned by many of the speakers, related to piracy, terrorism, illegal trafficking of weapons and drugs, human trafficking, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, climate change, illegal migration are at the forefront of concerns, and the list is long. So, in this list of areas, displaying the scale of challenges and the need for more cooperation and continued efforts to build confidence, resilience, and peaceful resolution of disputes through dialogue and negotiation is what is the European Union after. So we welcome, in this context, as mentioned by the previous speaker, the references at the 38th and 39th ASEAN summits on the universally recognized principles of international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS. We are also very encouraged by the gradual progress in the ongoing negotiations on the effective and substantive code of conduct that should remain in line with international law, in particularly the 1982 UNCLOS. So we are very supportive of an outcome as long as it respects UNCLOS and it is without detriment to third parties and interests under international law. So I want also to recall that in our dedicated bilateral meetings with the ASEAN, like the EU-ASEAN co-chairs press release at the latest senior officials meeting, we reaffirmed the importance of maintaining and promoting peace, stability, security, safety, and the right of freedom of navigation in and overflight above the South China Sea, as well as peaceful resolution of disputes in accordance with international law and the 1982 UNCLOS, as I mentioned before. Therefore, we have regularly conveyed our concerns about the dynamics in South China Sea, underlying our strong opposition to any unilateral actions that could undermine regional stability and international rules-based order. This position is valid for hybrid activities as well. So hybrid activities because hybrid activities sap the confidence-building efforts and they are counterproductive. We are also target of such tactics, and we can only reinforce key points about enhancing resilience and situational awareness for better decision-making and swifter responses if needed. So from our part, we have sought to advance the dialogue and the confidence between regional actors, especially within the ASEAN Regional Forum. And we have done so in all relevant meetings, as I mentioned before. So coming back to our strategy, the European Union will continue to explore with the member states options for enhanced naval deployments to contribute more visibly to the protection of sea lines of communication and freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific, while also seeking to help regional partners' capacity to ensure maritime security. There are upcoming internal consultations that they may lead in establishing new maritime areas of interest, beside the ones that we already have in the Gulf of Guinea. But in the coming months, we will also assess the opportunity of establishing maritime areas of interest in the Indo-Pacific and engage with our partners in the region, including Malaysia, by exploring the possibility for them to be associated with this. So, in fact, I mean, the audience needs to know that the EU naval presence has already been in increase in this region, with assets from France, the Netherlands, and Germany sailing in 2021. Their activities are carried out, and I underline that, with international, in line with international law. It can be seen as further evidence of the European Union's attachment to multilateralism. Naval diplomacy is part of that. So we have also, and we develop more EU projects. We give various names like critical maritime routes in the Indo-Pacific and enhancing security cooperation in and with Asia. So these kind of projects that they are there to cooperate with the countries in the region are working with regional partners to enhance information exchanges and analysis and crisis incident management, as well as to strengthen interagency cooperation in maritime surveillance, policing, investigation, and judicial matters. We have also developed an online tool which is neutral, secure, cost-effective, among others, that it is available for regional countries and maritime, that provides maritime information sharing centers. So with these projects that we have, and we have others that also project, they are more focused on counter-terrorism, cybersecurity, maritime security, crisis management. But we want also to use these tools to be a meaningful interlocutor in order to further develop and deepen our bilateral ties. So in operational terms, we have, as you see, a diverse footprint ranging from the mentioned presences, maritime presences, to other that we have deployed already, like Atalanta in the Horn of Africa and the southern part of Red Sea. And we have been very active with Asian partners in that regard as well. So before I conclude, I want to say that there is strong cooperation also we have in the European Union at the coastal guard level, involving a number of specialized agencies that we have in Europe, like the European Fisheries Control Agency, the European Maritime Safety Agency, and Frontex. And these tools and expertise, including our satellite programs like Galileo and Copernicus, are there that we can assist nations that they want to cooperate with us in order to address the hybrid threats, as I mentioned. So I want again to thank for this opportunity to outline the new EU's Indo-Pacific strategy. And I want to reiterate my initial message. The EU strategy for cooperation is a statement of the European Union's determination to engage in this region. It's a region full of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges. So what the EU offers is a substantial discussion about our inclusive long-term approach towards the region based on ASEAN centrality and departing from the certainty that most significant global challenges can only be resolved through partnership and cooperation. And in the South China Sea and elsewhere, advocating for open and rules-based international order, I think this it is the way forward. So I'm looking very much forward to discussing this with you further, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much to His Excellency. A lot of very interesting information that you brought up there. Now we will go into the Q&A session. And before we go into that, I'd like to remind all of our audience members that the Chatham House rules do apply, which means that all of the discussions and questions put forward in this discussion is exclusively for audience members who are joined today and not to be revealed or disclosed to external parties who are not privy to today's conference. All right, so we do have a question which I would like to pose to Haji Adi Ihram actually, and also to His Excellency. This question is from Muhammad Ashraf Mahmud. It also has his opinion on it. with regard to AUKUS. Okay, he has brought up AUKUS, the Security Pact. And so his question is, any new coalition such as AUKUS likely appears to divide rather than bring countries together. And this heightens major power rivalry and competition in the region. So what is or where do ASEAN and EU stand in this? So I think also from my view as well with the AUKUS Security Pact, like how Haji Ihram has mentioned about being friendly with all these superpowers in the world. It's a strategic move that we need to play. And while we have good relations with these three countries who are involved in the AUKUS Pact, for instance, Australia, the UK, and the US, but it is also, I think, important to be friendly or remain friendly with China too, who is obviously our economic lifeline. So where probably do ASEAN and EU stand? I'd like to give this question for Haji Ihram and also His Excellency to answer. Perhaps Haji Ihram can go first.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting question. This matter of AUKUS, we've been reading it. It's been in the headlines for the past few months. It's a very interesting security alliance. As far as ASEAN is concerned, I don't think there's an ASEAN position on AUKUS, although I do acknowledge there have been concerns expressed by individual ASEAN member states. I don't think there's an ASEAN position on the formation of this security alliance. But having said that, I must say that from our experience, we think that the establishment of AUKUS has been conducted in a very transparent manner. Australia, for example, has been very active in the region to reach out to ASEAN capitals, both on the foreign affairs side and on the defense official side, to explain the intentions and the purpose behind this security alliance. And as far as well, certainly from Brunei's perspective, we think they have been very transparent, and it reflects their shared commitment of these countries towards a stable and secure and towards a peaceful region. Whether we will, as the question asks, whether it will actually heighten regional differences, well, that time will tell whether that will be the case. But since the ADMM retreat is coming up on the 10th of November, we are going to have an informal meeting between the ASEAN defense ministers and the Australian defense minister. It will be the second round of informal meetings. So we have said to Australia, this will be the perfect opportunity for Australia to conduct dialogue to address the concerns expressed by ASEAN member states on the formation of AUKUS, and certainly to address some of the concerns that Yang Berhormat Deputy Defence Minister of Malaysia stated earlier on. So, rest assured to the public that we have a platform where this will be discussed and constructive dialogue can take place. And also, I think, other than reaching out to ASEAN capitals, I think one of the points that I think will be sent across to these three countries is not just to engage with ASEAN member states, but I think it's also important to engage, also be transparent with the other regional players, the other major powers in this region as to, the reasons behind the formation of AUKUS. I think that would be very helpful. Not just contain yourself, within the ASEAN capitals. It would be good to reach out to other regional players and also continue to be transparent. Thank you very much. I hope that helps.
Yes.
Yeah.
His Excellency, what about EU's perspective on this?
Okay.
Thank you. As I said before, I mean, these are newly forged strategies, both AUKUS and the European Union's Indo-Pacific strategy. So actually, I think both, as just mentioned by the previous speaker, both the AUKUS nations are reaching out, but we are doing the same. What I have to say that there is no competition. The EU's strategy is one of cooperation. We have long-standing relations from cultural, political, but in very important economic ties with this region. For us, if there is a difference, is that ASEAN centrality is there. We are attached to that, and it is very clearly mentioned in our strategy. But we believe that the world's stability and also the European Union's prosperity, as I mentioned before, 40% of our trade goes through those shores, the waters around Malaysia. So our prosperity also, it is closely interwoven with the ASEAN and Malaysia's prosperity and stability. Therefore, we have a lot of tools from, as I said, maritime defense, but also the Green Alliance and the post-pandemic. And I have to say that the European Union now is a strategic partner of ASEAN, and we will have a commemorative summit next year in Brussels. So we want to use these tools to explain the variety of instruments that we have in our hands and mobilize also the financing behind that in order to achieve a common stability and prosperity in the region. So I think this is what I'm going to say. It is ongoing. I personally, but also the High Representative, the EU's High Representative Borrell will be reaching out to all the counterparts and me to all the relevant ministries here in Malaysia. Yesterday, I happened to be to the Director General, the Secretary General of Customs, Malaysian Customs, and I explained the capabilities. So it is very much a work in process, but it's an inclusive and strategy of the EU and one of partnership and cooperation.
Now, while Malaysia and Indonesia have expressed their concerns over the Security Pact, it is also a comfort to know that all parties and all countries involved, they share a common goal of maintaining peace and stability. So that's a very comforting to know. Now we have another question from Noor Aini. This is for Haji Adi. Haji Adi, you mentioned that we must continue learning the best practices. So does ADMM have any plans to work with other multilateral organizations such as the EU, especially in the maritime domain?
Yes, that's a very good and timely question. The ADMM actually acknowledges the gaining interest from European countries, especially the European Union, and also its other multilateral organizations from the EU to work with the ADMM Plus. And in fact, just this year, the ADMM ministers adopted a concept paper, a revised concept paper on its external engagements with outside external partners, which would include the EU. So I think going forward in the future, we would expect the introduction of observers from countries outside of ADMM Plus, and I'm pretty certain that the EU has expressed its interest to become an observer to these ADMM Plus activities. Within ADMM Plus, we have 7 expert working groups. We have a peacekeeping expert working group, HADR expert working group, cybersecurity, and importantly, maritime security expert working group. So definitely, perhaps in the near future, we will be reaching out to friends and partners, which will include the EU, which has expressed interest in the past to to participate in ADMM Plus activities.
All right, and now we have another question. This is from the Royal Malaysian Navy. This is for His Excellency. The question is, littoral states in South China Sea are facing problems managing aging maritime assets. Is there any assistance or aids or programs from the EU that can help states improve their assets' capability and capacity?
Yes, we do. We do have, and there are already existing projects or what the European Union utilizes for its own maritime security around the Mediterranean or in the Gulf of Aden, whether it's against piracy, surveillance. I mentioned also our enhanced satellite systems. We have the one which is called Copernicus Sentinel #6 that also is capable of tracing the slightest moves, and we can also share data and organize through partners. So we have a wide toolbox, an array of instruments and projects, also with our own financing or co-financing that we can organize. So as I said, what I intend to do is personally, but also I intend to bring some of our experts in Brussels to explain in detail. I have requested various meetings, whether it's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, the National Security, but also, as I said, I spoke yesterday to Customs. We have a lot of tailor-made projects ongoing that have enhanced capabilities and the over vast opportunities. So when I will have these discussions in the days and weeks and months to come, I think also there will be engagement from the highest level of the European Union, from the High Representative, and also with the focus of next year's summit, the ASEAN summit. We intend to put this within the next months and year into action. So we are going to offer the palette, as very previously the previous speaker said. We also want to become observers of Asia Defense Ministers because we believe that we have added value to bring, and also in order to defend, because we are facing common challenges. And as I said, whatever happens in these trades affects directly Europe, even if we seem to be quite distant. But these hybrid threats, they have unfortunately no frontiers.
All right. Now we have time for one more question in this Q&A session. This is for Haji Adi Ihram. This is a question from Chester Axton. For quite a few years, the South China Sea has been a sphere of geopolitical contest. Are there any possibilities of security discussions to ensure ASEAN can be the balancing mechanism towards the geopolitics of this? Now, Haji Adi, I know you mentioned that the ASEAN have come up with a lot of frameworks and action plans that have been laid out, but what are your thoughts on this? Haji Adi, you're on mute.
Right, sorry. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Right, South China Sea, very popular issue. So I think that despite the competing, overlapping maritime claims in the region, definitely despite the critics of ASEAN, I strongly believe that ASEAN has played a key role and has persisted in its efforts towards peaceful settlements of territorial and jurisdictional disputes. So no doubt, I think ASEAN is the fulcrum in the region, and it plays a very important role in resolving all these disputes in a peaceful and constructive manner. And working in tandem with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the defense sector, especially the defense sector of ASEAN and its plus partners, Practical Defense Cooperation aims, especially within ADMM and the ADMM Plus platform, aims to increase mutual trust and confidence, as well as to enable dialogue and engagement to take place. And I think it's a good opportunity for me to mention here that The ADMM and ADMM Plus platform is perhaps the only venue where our defense ministers, with its plus counterparts, has been very consistent in calling for all parties involved to be engaged in self-restraint, to share values of peace and stability in the region for the benefit of our peoples. And this is coming from the defense ministers of all ASEAN countries and all the major players in the region. You have the United States, China, Australia, defense ministers in this platform. So they have been very consistent in making this statement, not only in the strategic dialogue, the exchange of views in the meeting itself, but also in the joint declarations that comes out of these meetings. And we strongly believe that, despite this being a defense official forum, we believe that disputes should be settled through diplomatic ways, through peaceful negotiation, and we have always emphasized in ADMM Plus in developing practical cooperation in the 7 agreed expert working groups that we have established under ADMM Plus. And the reason for encouraging this practical cooperation is the ministers would like to encourage mutual trust to be strengthened among the militaries, among the personnel themselves. And most importantly, I think for policymakers, practitioners like myself, we must instill this habit of, not only habit of cooperation, but also this philosophy of avoiding the use of force amongst our defense officials. I think that's very important message that is coming, from the top. So, I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
I think we can all concur, Haji Adi Ihram, with that. Thank you very much to our 3 speakers. First, Admiral Haji Adi and also His Excellency. I'm sure that our audience members may have more questions. It has been a very insightful session. If our audience members do have more questions, you can keep them coming in through the chat box. Our speakers will be more than happy to answer them through the public chat box. With that, don't go anywhere. We will begin with session 2 momentarily. We'll see you then in a few moments' time. So don't go anywhere.